And you shouldn't be guessing. You shouldn't have theories trying to prove theories correct on your athletes. And I'd done it all myself, and consequently I was able to vindicate what we were doing, and that was the important thing, I think.
You got a bit of criticism, didn't you, in the early days with your methods?
Well, I still get criticism. You always get criticised. Doesn't matter. If I produced 18 Olympic champions in the next Olympics, they still say I was wrong. People in New Zealand would still say I'm wrong. No, it's a question of changing the whole approach to training. And you had people who were Loughborough College trained and had coach on their blazer and so on. And I reversed the whole process, started doing things that they wouldn't agree with. As a matter of fact, I reversed the whole thing. And of course, when I was successful, they were the people who didn't come up and say, congratulations.
Still a bit of resentment at the time, do you think?
Oh, there's still resentment. There's still resentment. I still run against one or two of these guys, and they still don't think I'm right.
And now, in the late 50s, Peter Snell was coming into the scene, wasn't he? How did you come...
Peter Snell, I was training a boy called Michael Mackey from Halberg Grammar School, and strangely enough, he was faster than Snell and had more endurance. He was a better natural athlete than Snell. And I trained him to break Murray Halberg's New Zealand junior mile record. And he on grass he ran 4:16, which is pretty good for a 17 or 18-year-old. And he used to come to my place and train on Sunday morning. And Peter was at the same boarding house in Halberg Grammar School. And Peter would come down as about a 15 or 16-year-old, and he would get out and run, and on a Sunday run, then get in the car and then get out again and run. And he wasn't very serious about it, but Michael Mackey was. And I often thought about Michael Mackey, and when we went to Rome, if we could have got him up there against Elliott, because I tell you, this guy was a fantastic runner. And he was very, very fast. He won all the secondary school sports. And there was another guy at Halberg Grammar called Tony Aston, who was also the New Zealand junior 800-metre champion. So here we had in Halberg Grammar School these three very fine runners. Though Snell, give him his dues, he hadn't trained like the other two had. And consequently, when they drifted out of it, Mackey stopped running, mainly for his studies and so on. He now lives in Canada. And but Snell came to me and down in Te Arawa, I won the 15-mile race down there, and he won the 800 metres. And we were in the dressing room, and he said to me, "Do you think I could do well as a runner? And otherwise, I'll play tennis." And I said, "Well, let's give it a go and see what happens." So he won the New Zealand Championship that year. So
these three fellows at Mount Albert, Arthur, is this indicative of the whole country, or is it just a freak occurrence?
Look, there are champions everywhere. All you got to do is train them properly. I go out out where I live now, and they gave me 5 boys who dominated all the provincial and high school championships in Auckland. They still hold records, still New Zealand championships. They're just local boys. There are champions everywhere. All you got to do is train them properly.
Actually, Snell went quite close to making the team for Cardiff, didn't he, in '58?
Yes, he did, yes. And I think even after that for the Olympics, he still was down in the world rankings. I think he was only 25th in the world or something like that. So in many ways, it was the New Zealand selectors took a chance on it, on picking him, but it paid off.
In the early days, initially when he was training, what were his strengths and weaknesses?
His strength was his speed. He was the fastest guy I'd ever trained. You know, like Halberg wasn't fast enough to be a good international 800-metre runner, but or a mile runner for that matter. But Snell had the speed. He could run 22. I think it was 22.6 or something for 200 metres when I trained him, and of course that's on grass, and he would run under 22 on these tracks today. So, and we improved his speed a little, but that enabled him to handle the 800-metre pace without any problems.
Was he a very good trainer, very assiduous?
Oh yeah, he was very tenacious and very dedicated. He did his training. He got up in the morning, and he's living at Point Chevalier. And he get up in the morning, go for an hour jog most mornings, and get on his bike and cycle into the city, and about 6 miles, and cycle out to my place and run 100 miles a week, and then cycle over to Point Chevalier and carry on like this. There was no easy way. No one paid you to run in those days.
So he wasn't doing it just on natural ability. He was earning it.
Yeah, he earned it. But he had that speed. And of course, the first time he ran Waiarua, just under 22 miles through the mountains, it took him 3 hours and 12 minutes. His pulse rate at that time before we went out was about sitting just like we are now, It was about 60 beats, a normal sort of pulse rate. And at the end of a year, he was down to pulse was down to 39 beats a minute, and the same conditions. And he was running about 2 hours 5 for the marathon, for the course.
Moving into the Rome Olympics 1960, first of all, a bit of controversy. You weren't taken away as a coach yourself, Arthur.
No, they never took coaches away in those days. You know, it's a completely new ball game today. I don't blame those people. There was no real animosity, but it just frustrated me that the NZ3As didn't really understand what we were doing and what we were about, and they didn't understand how the coaches were important. Coaches motivate, coaches teach, coaches develop the potential, coaches produce the champions, and they didn't realise that. And coaches were very important over there, but it took them a while to get around to it. And as I say, I don't blame them. And when I was over there, Joe McManaman was the athletics section manager, and he was very cooperative. You couldn't have got a more cooperative guy. And the only time I got in the camp was when Sir Arthur Porritt was going to present medals, and they got me to go in and have lunch with Sir Arthur Porritt, and he said to me, any possibility of New Zealanders winning medals? And I said, well, I think Snell and Halberg can win their events. And that's why he presented the medals to those two New Zealanders on that occasion. Sir Arthur Porritt put the gold medals around their neck.
Snell winning the 800 at Rome. Now, was that easy, or was he clearly the best?
Yeah, he was clearly the best. He would have won by more if he hadn't got down on the inside there and couldn't get around, and Moynes had taken off. Yeah, he was clearly the best. Yes.
It's very difficult in your first Olympics, Arthur. Did he believe that he could win it?
Well, one of the reasons he won it was there were 4 races. If there'd been 3 races, it might have been a little bit closer. But there were 4 races, and he was marathon trained, and the more they went on, the better it was for Snell.
Kerr was a danger, was he, George Kerr?
Kerr could run 45.4 for 400 metres. Snell could only run 47.4. He was very much faster, but the trouble was when he got to 200 metres to go, he was too tired to use his speed, and that was the advantage we had through the high oxygen uptake level we developed with marathon training.
Now, the way that final was run, it looked like Snell had been boxed in and had no chance of winning.
Yeah, the tactics. One time our tactics went wrong. It didn't work out how we hoped it would go, and he was lucky he got through. Yeah.
Where did you watch the race from?
I was at the 200 metre mark, sitting with Les Mills, and the present mayor of Auckland. And Les said to me, he said, "You know, Arthur, I think he won it." I said, "Oh, we'll wait and see." Yeah.
Now, immediately after that, I think Murray had his 5,000 metre race.
Yeah, well, Murray knew what to do. We'd talked it out, and we had an advantage in those days on training, which we don't have today because of our marathon type of training. And he could use his endurance and get away from them. He got 80 metres, 3 laps to go. He kicked away, and he got 80 metres on the field. And, you know, in the Olympic final with 80,000 people watching, and people said to me, "Why didn't the other guys chase him?" I said they couldn't. Their training, they hadn't coordinated their training. They had the weak spots, and he was able to. When they had a recovery, then they started to pick it up, but it was too late.
Now, of course, Murray was a very seasoned athlete by then, especially compared to Peter.
He was the favourite to win. Yeah.
Did he? He must have had a good effect in your training school. The fact that you had this international athlete with them.
Well, there were times when you know, the athletes themselves get a little bit cocky, and you got to make them realise that they're not God's greatest gift to the country, and you straighten them out. Murray was going to leave Iraq at one part. I said, "Well, you go if you want to. Just do what you want." He thought about it and decided he was going to stay. You know, I've never been a person that cares so much about champions. I get as much fun out of taking some kid that's got no talent whatsoever and working with him, or some obese businessman, and getting him healthy. It makes more interest for me than seeing someone win an Olympic gold medal. As a matter of fact, quite often the people who aren't champions are the people who appreciate more what you do for them. Yeah.
Having said that, though, Arthur, that afternoon in Rome must, in hindsight, be the highlight of your athletics coaching career?
Yeah, that was the culmination of all the years of training and all the shayaking we'd got, and everyone reckoned we were wrong, and you know, now we were vindicated. And more important to me, I'd vindicated their faith in me, the boys' faith in me, and they proved that, you know, that they achieved their goals. Yeah.
The other great performance at Rome on the track, I suppose, in that area was Herb Elliott winning the 15.
Yeah, wonderful. Herb, you know, it teamed the night before. It came down in Torrance, which is the best thing out for a cinder track. It consolidated. You know, it's running on cinder. You go and try and sprint on wet on sand and see how you go. And that's why the times weren't as great in those days they are today. But it consolidated, and it was a faster track that day. And but Herb was far superior to anyone else. But as I say, I'd love to see Michael Mackie trained up like Snell was, just to see what he could have done, because that guy was probably one of the greatest athletes we ever had in New Zealand, who never fulfilled his promise. Yeah.
Now, these two fellows winning the gold medals, backed up by Barry McGee in the marathon.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you, the way he came through?
No. I said on the when they interviewed me after the 2 won, I said, we haven't finished yet. I said, we've still got more possibilities of medals. Yeah.
You put Barry onto the track for the 10,000 to get him used to the Olympic atmosphere a bit.
Yeah, Barry was very, very nervous in those days. He'd gone out and broken New Zealand records in training, and he'd go into the Auckland Championships, say, and with the national championships, and it looked like a wrung-out rag, and he couldn't perform at all. He'd probably lay in bed running the race 20 times before he got up in the morning, and then he couldn't run it. And so I got them to put him in the 10K to get him through that nervousness. And so they put him in the 10K, and no one expected him to do anything, so he got out there and he ran a very good race. He wasn't that far behind. He was just around the bend of the straight, and but it got him used to it, and he got out in the marathon and wasn't concerned at all.
Of course, he wouldn't have ever been able to beat Bakila, I suppose, in the marathon.
No, not at that stage. Later on, probably, but he needed more training, more endurance build-up.
So these three fellows winning medals must have put New Zealand and New Zealand athletics and your name and so on the map?
Yeah, it did. There's no question about that. It altered my life, because I couldn't work anymore, and the phone went all the time, and you know, I took a milk round on to get away from people and get away from the phone, and so I had a problem in that respect. You'd still get some people
talking to you, wouldn't you, during your milk
run? People come out in their pyjamas to talk to me sometimes. Yeah.
So, Arthur, having gained the publicity through those medals in Rome, New Zealand were invited to send a team to Europe in 1961. Was it a team that you were to take?
Yes. Yeah. We'd had invitations, and Bill Bailey was supposed to go, but Bill was a bit of a bad boy, and the federation didn't like him too much, and they put in Gary Philpott, and he was trained by Les Barker, and we had a few problems with him, because Les used to say, look, you can beat, he'd get these guys and say, look, you can beat them, and you know, they didn't have any real foundation for it, and you can beat Snell type of thing, and when he'd go out in front and run his guts out, and of course when he got to Europe, we got to White City, and I knew what Philpott was going to do, and in this 800 metres, now you got the Russians and the Germans and everyone there, and Snell was in the race, and he got out in front and went like the very devil. When we went over the plane, he hardly talked to us, and he was sort of on his own type of thing. He wasn't part of the team. And of course, when he came into the straight, about practically all the field went straight past him, and Snell won the race. And he was going off the track, and with his head down, his shoes. And I went up to him. I said, "Gary, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going back to the hotel." I said, "No, you're not. Just wait a minute." And there was a young lady that I knew, I'd met before, and I said, "Hey, would you like to take Gary to a nightclub, and I'll pay the expenses?" So I said, "Gary, you see that young lady? She's going to take you to a nightclub." And Sunday morning, Gary comes out about 10 o'clock, and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm going out with that girl." You see, he's only a young guy, and from then on, Gary was part of the team. He ran good races. He'd been pressurised that he could beat Snell, and he actually couldn't at that time. So, you know, you got to be a bit of a psychologist and pat them on the back or kick them on the backside at times.
We wouldn't mind someone running as fast as Gary.
Gary's a wonderful athlete. Wonderful athlete. Yeah, he's got a son who's very, very fast now too. Yeah.
Now they all ran well on that tour, but I suppose the race that New Zealanders remember is that relay world record, Arthur.
Yes, in Dublin. But you know, Barry McGee ran the fastest 10K in the world that year, and the second fastest 5,000, and Halberg ran the fastest 5,000 in the year that year. Yeah, the relay, we never had a miler in the team, not a known miler, and we had Snell as an 800 metre runner, and Halberg as a 5,000 metre, Barry and Philpott as an 800 metre runner, and McGee is more or less a 10,000 marathon runner, and yeah, the English were expected to win it, but we won it.
The English were going for a world record, I think.
Yes.
And who devised the tactics for that race, the order they'd run and so on?
Oh, I saw it. I put them in that way, yeah.
Did it surprise everyone that they came back with a world record?
I think it surprised themselves. Of course, the world record wasn't that great anyway, and it was on cinder, of course, which makes a difference.
But it must have been thrilling to come up with these 4 non-milers to come up with a mile world record.
Yes. Yeah, it made it interesting, yeah.
Moving along to the Empire Games in 1962, Arthur, so Murray was clearly the best in the world at this stage, was he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. He was favourite. See, Halberg only got beaten twice in about 5 years internationally, over 5,000 metres. He dominated that particular event.
What about the Canadian Kid? He was a threat then?
Yeah, Bruce Kidd couldn't handle Halberg, no. Bruce Kidd was a very good runner, but he wasn't up to that class. He was, any time Halberg, and even Clahessy, who I trained, the Australian coach, they could both beat him. Yeah.
Peter wasn't 100% fit, was he?
When was this?
In Perth in '62. He'd had a stress fracture in the build-up.
Yeah, that's right. No, he was fit, all right. We'd got him through it. He went up the bullock track up there in Western Springs for doing hill training. He forgot his running shoes. He used a pair of tennis shoes. That's how he got the stress fracture. And anyway, no, we got him through it. See, when you get that marathon background, you don't lose it. You don't lose that development. It's there, and you don't have to do so much as you used to get to a good high fitness level.
By Tokyo 1964,